Many of us have known someone who's had an accident or a head injury that seemed minor, but it took months and months to recover. And this could have been you. And how do you support when you're waiting for that bone to heal? How do you support the bruising, the fear and the anxiety, or maybe it's a concussion or a brain injury? Beyond that usual rest and relaxation that they invite you to take so you can recover, what else could you be doing during that stillness and in the silence? Our guest today had a silly fall, and I think we all know the kind, where we just take that misstep, you even know it as you go to take it, and then things happen. And some of us are lucky enough to break that fall, but in the cases where we can't, and down we go, then we wonder what happens with that simple little gesture, the broken bones, and perhaps a head injury. Our episode today explores options you have available to you when considering complementary and integrative health options. And we're exploring what happens when you don't just wait for rest and relaxation to heal all. Today, our guest who had the injury is Denise Cambiotti with Muscle Tuners International, and as well as her two colleagues and friends who stepped up to support her with the symptoms she was experiencing throughout her recovery. So for those who are listening to the podcast, Denise is sending some loving kisses and hugs over to her colleagues. Bev Hunter is from Turning on the Light Learning Center in Kelowna, BC. She has extensive experience in neuroreflex integration and brain gym, and I know her as the whiz on balance boards for helping to support the body through reflexes that we use to move in patterned ways. Her work has taken her around the globe to assist others as well as those within her own family. And Alexis Costello is founder of GEMS College of Energy Medicine from Costa Rica, originally from Kelowna, and is the creator of GEMS courses, A Touch for Health, and a SIPS instructor. SIPS is for Stress Indicator Point System. She travels the globe as well, offering training in these techniques, and has helped to spread the word about how we use touch for health in SIPS. So I'm going to bring these wonderful people into the conversation now and get the details going. So hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me.
Hello, Michelle.
Good morning.
So this is a special treat to have four of us in a conversation. Usually it's just two of us exchanging. And we have so much experience and education sitting in this small circle. But what I'd like to do to get started is, Denise, would you like to share what tea you've chosen to bring into the conversation today?
I have green tea with cherry blossoms, and I absolutely love it even when it's not springtime.
Beautiful, beautiful. And Bev, what have you got today?
I'm afraid I'm a water drinker first thing in the morning, so I've got my water in my special teacup, and it's just how I have to get going. So
That's awesome. And I know it's early morning for you, it's mid-afternoon for me, so I know first thing in the morning we have our regimes that we have. So Alexis, you're in the hot spot in Costa Rica. So have you got a cold tea blend or a hot tea blend for you today?
what time is it there?
It's 10 o'clock here. And for me, I'm seriously jet lagged and my sleep patterns are all messed up. So my tea is coffee today, and probably will be for the rest of the week.
Oh, all right. So now I had originally thought I was going to make an awesome tea blend, which is, it actually has that title. And I'm just going to hold up my mug. I'm going to be winking at you ladies with my mug. But I have a special blend I'm just working on, which is going to be for dream building. And this is in honor of a special anniversary that's coming up for my parents. And so that's what I put in my mug today. And then I started to think about dream building. And really what we're going to have a conversation about is how our techniques allow for that dream building to happen, if it's in the recovery phase after injury, or if it's us moving forward into the things we want to be doing.
Hey, Michelle, mention your audio's dropping out. You might to mute yourself and then come back.
Okay. Thank you, Denise. So I'm just going to bring
And
that
your
back.
video too. There we go.
It's going to be that kind of day. The wind isn't blowing today, but sometimes those little gremlins get into the internet, so you just never know. Anyway, thank you for being here. Denise, do you want to start with telling us a little bit about what happened when you had your fall?
Well, thanks for introducing it as a silly little misstep, because it was a big silly misstep. My doctor, when I did finally follow up the family doctor, he says, "How did it happen?" I says, "You don't want to know. It was, you know, pretty stupid." And he said, "Every accident is stupid. Worry." So it was good to be acknowledged. An accident is an accident. Now, what happened is I really went ass over tea kettle and I fell at least 5 feet. And I didn't think I hit my head, but I knew I landed squarely on my shoulder blade. And the rest of me went flump. And I knew immediately things weren't going right. And it was the most amazing thing. I must have blacked out for a few seconds because all of a sudden I became aware that I could not breathe. And I mean, I've had my breath knocked out of me before. I'm going, I can't breathe. And it was amazing. And I want to share this one tip right off the whole start. And since then, I've started seeing doctors on the TV shows. They rub the sternum or the breastbone up and down, up and down, up and down. And this is we use it as a reflex point for the diaphragm. And somewhere in my knowingness, my good arm that wasn't messed up flew over and was rubbing that sternum and I breathed. So the real emergency was over. And then I went, uh-oh. So I was found, the emergency came and took me off to hospital, and x-rays revealed way worse than I expected. They told me I had a little brain bleed. Don't worry, it will probably get better. And I'm going, oh, okay, because they've got me stoned out on pain medications at this point, because I've basically fractured almost every bone in the left side of my chest in multiple places. Like some ribs, they just went, you don't want to know, but I later found out at least 3 places in most of my ribs. So it was not too comfortable. You know, things like punctured lungs, bruised hearts, things like that. And I got to give a shout out to the people working on the wards, because the people in my ward were so diverse. They're not your average patient anymore. And those nurses are rock stars at dealing with dementia, at dealing with opioid withdrawal, at dealing with really pissed off people because something didn't go right for them. Amazing. So I'm in all that. And when they said, do you think you're good enough to go home? I says, what do I need to do? And they says, you just got to be able to sit up in bed from it being flat. And I went, okay, abs engage. And I flew up, almost went ass over tea kettle is an expression I use, in the other direction, and totally stressed out the physiotherapist. I'm like, oh, don't worry, I've got very good spatial orientation. And I did not fall off the bed. And she went, okay, fine, you can get up, you can go home. A little bird found out I'd had an injury, and somehow a message got through to Alexis. And here it's summertime after a horrible wet spring, and I'm going, yay, I get to sit on the porch in the shade, but in the warmth, and rest. And I'm going, okay, this is part of healing. I was not really aware. I thought I'm walking and talking and engaging normally, but I really wasn't. And I was just exhausted. I was napping constantly. I didn't know I had a concussion. Nobody actually said you have a concussion. And this little bird gets a hold of Alexis down in Costa Rica, who says, can I fit you in? And Alexis, God bless you, really, and every angel and every positive energy source on the planet, whatever you want to call them, thank goodness you learned the SIP system, became a champion for the SIP system, because I've taken all the levels except one little extra workshop that was put on during the pandemic time. And I had no awareness that, there's shock and trauma points. And so you helped clear shock and trauma from my system by doing a distance session. You helped reboot whole bunches of things. I remember you going, oh, that's interesting. Do you have hiatal hernia? And I'm going, oh yeah, I'm not very comfortable there. You did something, and that was remarkable because a lot of discomfort went away and my digestive system came back. And part of the digestive system, of course, when your nervous system is stressed, your digestion system is off. And then when that's off, you're off. So that little intervention that you offered me was absolutely brilliant. Because I was not in a place to know what I needed or didn't need. I really didn't know. 3 weeks after, I follow up with my family doctor, and he goes, well, yeah, no wonder you've had a concussion. And I'm going, oh, that's why I'm not focusing for more than 5 minutes at a time. I just thought I'm healing. Then I got myself on a bus on invitation of a friend and went up to the Okanagan area of British Columbia and hung out with a friend. And Bev lives just down the street. And I knew in my soul, from the small experience that I had with one of the system that Bev is trained in, I needed Bev. And Bev did something that was the weirdest thing to experience. She said, can you push against my hand? And she just gently pushed, and I could push my head. She put her hand on my sacrum. Can you just kind of give a little push against my hand? And I could do that. But when she put one hand on the sacrum, one hand on the head, and says, now can you do that? You know, can you push your head? Not an iota of strength. I was like a newborn little floppy chicken. And so I don't have that training. So I was so astounded. And in what, half an hour, Bev, you helped reset a major postural reflex for me. And the next day when I went walking on the beach, I could stride instead of carefully pick my afraid I was going to fall. This is John I was poured into came at a really critical time. Visual approach and the hands-on compassionate, I'm right there, baby approach. So thanks. So that's a little bit about the story. And just continue getting better and better. And my arm again because I was literally. And so I couldn't put up with the idea of carrying my arm around for, 4 to 6 months. So I'm just happy that I had the skill to tune up some muscles when I had enough attention to do a few every day. And when they started firing, other muscles started firing. Then I started settling down the pain patterns when one was trying to work too hard. So the work that we do, Michelle, is brilliant. And so thank you for the opportunity to give a spotlight to all the different wonderful modalities that members of the Canadian Association of BioEnergetics perform for their clients.
Thank you, Denise. Now, my internet is fading in and out, so I'm not sure that I was able to record parts of it unless someone else was playing the host, so hopefully we've got all the pieces. But it's really interesting to hear how the story goes, because even though you're trained and you're very well trained, you've been in this field for a long time, even though you had that expertise, you still didn't have the wherewithal to really dive into how can I fix myself, which is the whole point. Is we can do that on a daily basis. We can create proactive care. But when it comes down to crisis care, we do really need other people to be there to support us and to be that mind for us and to step into that. So taking the story from where it is, let's move to Alexis and let's have you describe a little bit, because Denise started to explain about distance healing. So anybody who's listening to the podcast who's never heard of that before, that becomes a far-fetched idea. How can you help someone in Vancouver when you're down in Costa Rica. So I look forward to what you can share about your experience helping out.
Okay. Um, so, I mean, maybe I need to just explain a little bit about how the modalities that I work with primarily work in order to make that make sense. Um, you mentioned SIPs earlier, and with SIPs, we're working with finding stress within the body. And so when I get a phone call or something like that, and someone tells me about the condition that they're dealing with, I'm not looking for, oh, how do I fix that condition? But rather, what I'm looking at is where's the stress in the body is either the result of that condition or that has like allowed that condition to exist, right? And we use the acupressure point system, basically like little buttons to kind of show and bring up the kind of stress that is being held in the body at this moment in time. And then we use another set of acupressure points to help the body start releasing that stress while at the same time bringing in the energy it needs to heal itself. So that's working with SIPs, and then GEMS, which is my own stuff, is more fluidity and working with the 5 elements and bringing in a little more connection between all of the things. So I kind of think of SIPs as what I do in GEMS. And so because of these modalities, they're not these modalities are set up to help you figure out where the stress is being held in the body, but it's not like they themselves do any healing. I don't really do all that much in a session. I think of myself more as a translator, and it just happens to be the language that I speak. So it's easy to hear a language from somewhere else and to translate. You don't have to actually be in the room with someone to be able to hear them, right? And so the same way, I can be kind of tying into someone's energetic field and to be able to see where the stress is on that field, on that body, even if we're not necessarily in contact. When I was working with Denise in this case, we were tied in by Zoom. And because this was working with primarily modalities that she's really familiar with, that helps too, because I can say things like, okay, now hold here, now touch here, right? And so she's an active participant in bringing that energy online and being able to kind of work with it as well. But the body is healing itself. So as soon as we take out the blocks that are like keeping it from being able to bring in the frequency of healing energy that it needs, it does its own thing and it kind of unwinds its own stress. So I really do feel like we can do that from anywhere.
That's beautiful. And Alexis, how do you know where to start? Can you describe for people what that initial process is?
Yes. Okay, so when somebody starts telling me about whatever it is that they're working on, I would call it putting it in the field. It's like setting a context for this is what this person is experiencing right now. And that might be the physical, yeah, but there's also the emotional, right? There's the how could I have been so stupid as to make this mistake? Or there's the, oh, that was embarrassing. Or there's the financial concern or the thought process or whatever that is. All of that stuff is locked in here with the physical as well, right? And so when we put that into the field, we're putting it in as a hologram. It's not just this one thing, but it's all of the things in their big ball of stress that need to be addressed. And in order to kind of determine where to go with it, I'm using muscle testing, muscle response testing as a biofeedback mechanism. If the person is not there with me, I'm using my own muscle testing. So I'm using myself as a surrogate for the other person. And I use a lot of moding to kind of set up the structure. And for people who aren't maybe in our industry and don't know what I mean by that, hand modes come from mudras. They have a strong tradition in Ayurvedic and yogic tradition. And there's this idea that we have energetic flows that run down our hands. And so if you've ever seen the yogis hold their hands in certain positions, if you've seen Bollywood dancers hold hands in certain positions, there's an idea that we're bringing an energy flow into this, right? So it allows me to kind of see on what level are we starting? Are we looking at the body? Are we looking at the emotion? Are we looking at a thought process? Are we looking at your energetic spirit? What are we looking at right now? And then once I have that kind of in my field, then I can go, okay, well, if I know we're working on the body, then that takes me from having, so let's say 1,000 points that I might look at to now only having these ones here. So it's narrowed down my field, right? So I see muscle response testing a lot of the time as being a process of elimination. Every time you get an indicated change, it's closing certain doors and opening another one until you become more and more and more precise, right? The analogy that I use sometimes with my students is it's very much like if I tell you, could you go into my place and get my keys? I mean, if I have a big house, that could take you forever. If you're just searching around my house looking for keys, I mean, how many would you spend kind of wandering around opening drawers, right? But if we use a mode, then it's like stories of the house, and then we can maybe use another mode, maybe we use another master point. Okay, now you know that they're in the kitchen until it becomes very clearly, the keys are in my purse, on the kitchen counter, in the third pocket on the front. And that's what muscle testing can do, right? And so then we realize this is the stress, and then we can see it. And often when the body can kind of see it like that, it can bring its attention to it and it can heal it in a new way. I'm really sorry. I just opened my mouth and a lot more came out than I was actually expecting. Feel free to cut that down to like a normal person chunk of conversation later.
Oh no, no, it's lovely because the thing that's so beautiful about the work that we do is that we have the ability to prioritize with muscle monitoring. And when you can get information from the body feeding back, here's what I want you to pay attention to, it's a lot different than just going to that menu of choices. And like you said, you had thousands of choices that you could choose from, but to be able to just narrow it straight down into what is the most important piece, that takes away guesswork and time and trial and error and things that happen for other people who don't take the time for that biofeedback piece. And so I loved how you described it because that does really make us unique. And it means that you can get to an injury like Denise's and really get right in there and start to make significant, fast changes. So the road to recovery is a lot less. So thank you, Alexis, for that lovely description. Let's have Bev come in with her way of knowing, so how she came into the picture, and then the beautiful techniques that she brings to the table.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Alexis. That was an excellent way of describing the muscle checking and how it works. I don't think I did that much muscle checking with Denise on this opportunity that I had with her. She had mentioned which reflexes that she was aware of that she thought was off. And so first thing I did was I asked her I work with a lot with noticing. Like if the person notices where they're at, where their pain is, and what's working for them and what's not working for them, is an anchoring in of where they're at in the moment. And so I checked in with all her symptoms, what she was feeling at the moment. And then she was mentioning her back and stuff. So, and this reflex that she was mentioning was on her back. So again, it was really nice that she was aware of some of the modalities that I work with. And one of my favorites is reflexes. So maybe I should explain reflexes first. Reflexes are something we are naturally born with. And as we are developing as an infant, we are waking up these neural pathways that are innate in our body. We learn how to crawl and walk and roll over and all those things. Well, those special movements that we do when we play and when we explore our bodies are anchoring in the neural pathways between our body and our brain. Most of these reflexes are held and stored in the back brain, in the cerebellum part back here. And so they're there for our survival. So when Denise fell, all these reflexes to help save her and protect her kicked in. And when we're in car accidents or when we fall off a bike, there are certain reflexes that kick in to save you from getting hurt. And there's very specific ones that save you from your head getting hit or, and that's why we break our arms when we fall first with this one reflex that comes straight out. That's to keep our head from hitting, but we break a wrist or we break an arm instead, which is much less than getting a head injury. So if we don't have that particular reflex strong in our body, then it doesn't work for us when we need it and we hit our heads more. If it's too fast, you don't have time to get some of those reflexes out, but most of the time there is. And if one isn't working, then another reflex will come up. For instance, we had a lady in one of our classes and she was going through an experience. And because this was the third time she took the class, she knew what reflexes were. She could feel the different reflexes kicking in as she was being dragged by a tractor on the farm. And that was a profound moment for me and her to feel those different reflexes trying to help in that particular moment in her life where she was being dragged across a field by a tractor. Or Janice, this back stuff was it. So I asked her to sit on the massage table, and right away I noticed the way she sat on the massage table and how she had to move her body to get up there, which wasn't normal because of her injuries. And then I like to tune into the body if I'm there with hands on. And so I put one hand on either side of her spine, on her back, mid-back, and I realized that there was quite a difference between the height of each side. So all those muscles in her back weren't equal on either side of her body. And so I immediately told the body, show me what you need. And right away, all that fascia and muscles, everything started to respond. All I did was give biofeedback or proprioception feedback to those muscles and her brain. My intention is to be there and be present, 100% present, and let her body do what it needed to do. And her back just started responding. And it was amazing. And that's long before you even start with the reflexes. You just have to tune in and find out where you're starting from and what the bodies can actually start doing. So
I was just going to interject there, Bev, because you have your hands up. So for those people that are on the podcast who can't see, you have your hands up. And so when you were saying that you were holding the space, you had your hands on her back, you were just holding your hands there with that intention of letting the body heal. So that initial idea of healing. Okay, perfect. Yeah. I just wanted the audience to know that. Sorry, go ahead.
Yes, and it's really the brain and the body talking together. So my hands gave the brain and the body time and to let it actually experience where it's at. And from there, then the communication starts talking. So once that started evening out, then I started checking, okay, what neural pathways is she experiencing on and which ones just aren't working for her right at the moment. So calming the body down by just, let's get some information. And so I held the back of her head, and that alone, she was able to hold her head up. But if you watch carefully, you know she's holding her head and her shoulders like this. There's no separation between the head and the shoulders. And when you look at people who have had neck injuries or shoulder injuries, they often move in there's no separation between head and shoulders. Like they just move in one big unit. And you know that there's been injuries there. There's lack of communication between the head and the neck's just not working in the same way it should be. So there's reflexes. There's probably a dozen reflexes alone just with that connection. And I love working with that, finding out which ones are on, which ones are available to the body and the brain, and which ones aren't. And once you find out which ones are on and off, just with a very light touch, only 2% pressure, it's because you don't want to re-injure anything or re-traumatize anything. You just want to find out what's working. And once you get all those connections, then they can get stronger and stronger. And it's a matter of the way a baby does it. They repeat and repeat until that neural pathway is strong. So they don't walk immediately when they stand up. They test it and they move it and they, little bit at a time. Rolling over takes a month or so before they get it really fast and good. It's practice. So we went through a number of different reflexes that I was aware of to be able to stand up and make that connection between the tailbone and the head. And that tailbone is our center, and the neck is, and the head is one end of that spine. So the trunk extension, Perez, all those reflexes help that connection, and others are moved or created from that. So we checked side to side reflexes, the fight flight ones, and we checked the top bottom, and then the back and front, because pressing against the back of the head is one thing with the spine, but you also have to hold all those neck muscles in the front as well. And some were on, some were off, the angled ones. And by the time we were finished, she had them all back on. So she had those connections. Adults are easier to work with after an injury than a little one sometimes, because they had those connections before. So it's just a reminder. Where once children with cerebral palsy or who've not really had all those connections really well, that's a matter of educating. And so you really do go back to the infant stage and practice and practice and practice. Like it's a repetition. And so, but I've seen miracles happen when working with the body and finding out where they're at and how to teach them to reconnect. So
that's beautiful. Thank you, Bev. And one of the areas that I've spent a fair bit of time here as I'm just finishing off my dissertation is around awareness and how do we know. And so what you were describing was there's so much information of these little tiny clues that come along that we're not really aware of, or we make a comment about but didn't even really know that we had commented in that regard. And so to be observing, how is somebody moving? How do they coordinate themselves to get up onto a massage table? Well, that's just sitting down for most people. But for us, it's not just sitting down. It's about how does that whole thing come together? And then when they're sitting down, now what happens to them? Do they completely collapse? Or like you said, do they turn their head, but they turn their whole body to look somewhere because they don't know how to separate those parts, or they don't know how to coordinate them together. It's such a beautiful synergy. Denise, I'm curious because through the work, with other people, how they respond to things. But now you're in that body where you're kind of aware of things, but not aware of all things. And Alexis does some work on you and you have some aha moments. And then Bev works on you and you have a few more aha moments. Can you describe a little bit what it feels like when those pieces come together and all of a sudden you realize, oh, that part of me is back?
Oh my goodness. So my primary health caregiver was on medical leave all summer. And when he came back, I said, I know you do concussion protocol. I know I'm not firing on all cylinders properly. And he basically, what underpins some of his training as a chiropractor and naturopath, he's also doing cranial sacral. So he's blending all kinds of stuff. And so I literally have structural stuff. I still have bones in my body that are not joined. And I have to manage that. And I am finally, because I've had all this wonderful support from people, the doctors have kind of said, you're fine. And I'm going, no, I do need surgery. I don't want surgery, but I need it because this and this and this. And they're going, oh, and I told so many doctors certain clues that now when I'm looking at it more than 4 months down the road and on the surgery waiting list, finally, they're going, ooh, yeah, you have like a nerve plexus injury. This is severe and you need, and I'm going, I know, like I've just been managing my life to finally see somebody. And what ended up happening is I got fallen through it in the follow-up system. So many people in the healthcare industry are missing in action right now. The referral didn't go through. The head nurse was gone. The doctor that did the referral was left. The doctor who received the referral was on medical leave. I mean, it's been an interesting process, right? So I'm finally in the hands of a guy who can at least get my mechanical parts continuing to heal. And I had no idea how much stress was in the neck. As Bev, like I had no idea until he's holding, just holding my skull, and all of a sudden my head. And for those who are listening to the podcast, I'm dramatically dropping my head back against my headrest. It was amazing to experience. It was like, oh, you wanted me to relax. So what this means to me is experiencing this complementary and alternative process is beyond a shadow of a doubt, has hastened my recovery, has improved my more access to my fuller potential. And I just have told so many people, how do other people return to their lives after an injury when they don't know about muscle testing, muscle monitoring, biofeedback? How do they recover if they don't know that you can magically rub or activate or touch a reflex and say, hello, do you remember how to do your job? Like, it is so simple, it's so non-invasive, and it is so profound. And my heart aches for people who suffer for months and years. And I have seen people in my clinic where I have been able to do magic for them. They've been incapable of doing something for a period of time. And for me to have the embodiment and the experience myself has been really a sacred and spiritual experience. So did I answer your question? It's just like, holy cow, Batman. Like,
Yes, you did find it. Yep. But it also, by taking it back to the medical model, you're right. You know, they have their specialties, and then they also have right now their hardships because of the situation all systems are in.
Yeah.
And then we have this piece, which is our own responsibility to our self-care, to at least know when our body is giving us cues, or to be able to understand how you should be feeling and how you might want to feel, and then being able to know the right directions to go to find who can support you with that. And I know that's a big quest for a lot of people. If they've never thought about it, they've just been going along with their life. Everything is great until it's not. And then they're like, now what do I do? And yes, it can be crisis, but on the other side too, it can be discovery. And I think all of us can attest to those discoveries, because we've all come from places of injury and reasons for knowing about how to use these tools that have led us down this road. Go ahead, Denise. What were you going to say?
oh, I just had to wiggle in my chair, as I do all the time. As anybody who's ever been in a workshop with me, I I cannot learn by sitting still. And I'm not ADHD, but I need to move to process. So thanks for noticing that. And I am just so blessed to have colleagues like you and have other colleagues that many of them have said, let me help. And to trust and allow people into my life. It's not easy. And here I am, you know, going on the whole internet where this is going to be broadcasted to whoever to say, I did a silly and in a weird way, what I do want to say to some people is I feel like this has been part of my life path to have this experience. And I gave my kids a really hard time. I says, yeah, I had to beat you because I'm really competitive. So you guys broke a bone in your arm and you did this to your, you know, no, I'm going to top all that, right? I'm going to do better. But now it gives me, you know, I sent out a note to my customers to say, hey, I've been kind of quiet for a while. This is why. And when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. And now I finally have the story that all of those marketing gurus and the coaches and the, you know, you're supposed to go to a network event and make people say, whoa, you're doing what? To interrupt them from saying, oh, you're a real estate agent. I know what real estate agents do. Nobody knows what I do. But to be able to say, you know, at the time, 3 weeks after my injury, all this is crushed, shoulders broken, but I can wave my arm around and like right now I've moved a bone, it's pinching on a nerve. But 3 weeks after my injury, I was able to have full range of motion. And the therapists I'm talking to are going, no. I've talked to other people who've had chest ribs broken up and they're going, no. And they're going, yes, because this is the value of energy work. And asking your body, what can I do to support you today? Is it go take a nap? Is it to eat better food? Is it to have movement in my day? Is it about tuning up a muscle, resetting a neurological reset? Is about phoning a friend and just having a conversation to lighten my heart. So listen to your bodies, listen to your intuition. And if anything is, I'm really learning you have to advocate for yourself. Because I found out that if I really hadn't been able to get through to the right, and I'd seen a couple of orthopedic surgeons and stuff, and nobody identified, they said, oh, you're special, basically, not so many words. Only 1% of the people, and I love being special, but not in this case. Only 1% of this kind of injury has this issue to it that you haven't, you know, it's not that anybody screwed up and was like, well, yeah, kind of, because if I didn't get in the surgical queue and then I'm now kind of in a rush queue, letting this go too long would impact my life forever. And I'm basically going to the doctors and say, what if I want to carry a grandbaby? What if I want to walk a dog? You know, the other day I'm carrying my laptop bag and I went like that and my hand just went poof. It just, there goes my laptop down on the ground. I mean, I won't trust myself to carry a baby if that's happening, right? So, and I still work. And they're going, oh, you work? I need my arm. It's more than range of motion. It's about strength and dependability and stability. So I finally, you know, because I was in shock and I didn't know how to communicate properly. And when I finally got through to somebody, I was able to use my words. So, and when you have a brain injury, man, that's difficult. So great sympathy for people who are challenged. And I say, bring somebody along with you on your visits to help fill in the gaps or ask the questions that you suddenly go, what was I going to ask? I would take days to do, and I have them on my phone and say, wait a minute, excuse me, you know, I've had a brain injury. Hello, I need a reminder. And they would be patient with me and allow me to do that. And, you know, the thing is what I am doing, it's invisible. I walk down the street, nobody knows what's going on with me. I'm on a network event, nobody knows what's going on with me. But when you're talking to somebody that can make an effect on your life, you really do your best to be clear, and do your best to say, I really am in trouble, and maybe I'm like a special case. Can you take a second look? Because I had no idea.
Exactly. Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you, Denise. As we bring this all to a close, and we put some context onto what could be happening for other people and what they might want to know, Alexis, maybe do you want to just say a little bit about the kinds of people that you often see and the kinds of support that your work has been able to provide?
It's such a big question because, I mean, like as my colleagues know, I think we end up with a lot of clients from very different sort of walks of life. And I know that the people that I'm seeing right now, it's a very different group than what I was seeing, several years ago. At the moment, a lot of my work is on other practitioners and on students and working with people to help people who already have an awareness of their own health. Maybe they're working in some aspect of the holistic health world, but like Denise, have had some kind of injury or something like that that is keeping them from being able to apply their full resources to themselves at this moment in time. And it doesn't just have to be because there's been a big accident or something like that. It's hard to work on yourself because we have blinders to our own stuff, right? I love being worked on by someone else because, it's very easy for me when I look at someone else's pattern to be like, oh, well, I can see what's behind that, right? Like, let's look at that belief system that's creating that whole dynamic for you. But myself, that's a whole different thing. So that's a lot of the work that I've been doing right now. And then also working a lot with female health, working with women through fertility and pregnancy and hopefully labor and delivery and aftercare, which was not something that I really had intended on specializing in a few years ago, but it's something that's been happening really organically. And it's amazing. I think it's one of my favorite things to be doing right now. I'm writing courses about that at the moment. So it's really exciting because I enjoy unraveling the mystery of that because we understand what happens when a baby is in gestation. We understand a lot of the physicality that's happening in that, like the differentiation of cells and the building of tissues and even the forming of primitive reflexes. But there's not as much information out there about the energetic structure and how the meridians are developed, how the chakras are developed, the epigenetic stress, lineage stress that comes through, how that determines the genetic structure of the baby. I mean, these are huge things. So that's a lot of what I've been focusing on in the last little while. And yeah, so that's exciting at the moment. But I really do believe that muscle testing, muscle monitoring, biofeedback, working with these modalities, there's no one that this can't help, right? It's really about finding the modality and the practitioner that speak to you. And then once you make that connection, all things are possible. I was laughing a little bit when I was listening to Denise because every once in a while, somebody in my family or myself would get sick or injured or something like that. And I'll say out loud to my husband, like, how do people who don't know how to do this stuff cope? And he goes, honey, they take drugs. They take lots and lots of drugs. He's like, somebody who had the things happen to them that have happened to you or have had these situations would be on several medications. That's what happens, right? And yeah, there are absolutely times when we need those medications and, they are lifesavers when they're needed, but they're not the only thing that are needed. And we can sure make a difference to how many and how long and what types and everything like that when we have the energetic resources behind us as well. So
thank you. People will say, I don't really know what you do because you do so many things. And and it's, you know, I stop and it's like, I can't even sometimes describe what I do because I do so many things, but I do that because these tools fall into so many places. So it's not just that like you said, you're focused on these people at this moment, but then it shifts, times change, you know, through the pandemic, it was mental health and stress and anxiety of being at home. So the needs for us had changed. And so we just respond with the tools that we have. And so, yep, there's sometimes hands in several different pockets, but it just goes to show you how many places you can really truly make a difference with the same tools, which is interesting. Okay, so Bev, what would you like to add to the conversation at this point?
Yeah, you know, there's 4 of us on here, and we all do some similar things and other very divergent things. And yet it's all within this one field. I'm in awe of what all of you guys and what you do. And when I sit back and think about how I've spent the last 25 years and all the things that I've learned, I am in awe of myself sometimes, and we don't really know that. And I'm actually in the process of, I was slowing down, and now I'm starting to get busy again. I've had my own health issues, and that's probably what's kept me in the field as long as it has, and helped me as long as, like, I've been diabetic for over, I don't know, 50 years. And the only medication I'm on is insulin. I've been through many different things, and medication doesn't, other medications, heart medications, all those kind of things don't work for me. I have to do it physically. I have to form something. I've formed an awareness in myself that I am directed to the people I need to help me. And I thank God there's people like you guys out there that can actually help each other. So I understand how Alexa's doing a lot of work on our colleagues, because they get it. Like, they really, we know how well it works and how life-saving it is. So it was a pleasure helping Denise when she was in town. And my clients right now, I have small children, school-age children who aren't dealing with school. And then I have 50, 60-year-olds who are just getting old and wanting their bodies back. When it comes to reflexes, that's part of what we lose, is those neural pathways throughout our bodies. So waking them up is easy on elderly people, especially those that have not been too injured. They're just growing old because of circulation and different things. So I got myself a device, a PEMF device, and I use it to get circulation started, and then I start working with the body. And I just love it. It's like, okay, let's talk. And there's nothing like talking with the body. We are amazing, incredible creatures. So it's my joy, actually, to just get my hands on a body and start working with the energy flow and everything through it. So
I had a conversation with someone this last week too about, you know, what was our first language? And really our first language was electrical. And then our second language became movement. And then eventually language came along. But we never think of it in those terms. And we're so disconnected sometimes from those two pieces when they were the innate piece that started us. And so it's lovely that we can play in this field and be where we are. So thank you so much for, go ahead, Bev.
Oh, I was just thinking, when you said that, it reminds me of a child and a parent, you know, when they first start communicating, or a sibling. it's just a look or a movement or whatever that mother or father gets that message and they respond immediately, where they don't wait till they're 3 years old and can talk. They're listening right from the day that child is born. Yeah.
Exactly. Beautiful. So for those people that are at the end of the podcast or watching this on YouTube, we have such diverse backgrounds, as Bev has commented on. I just want, if you just give me one way that we'll just talk about how we can find you out in the internet somewhere. And then the rest will actually be in the description for the podcast or on the YouTube channel. But I just want people to know that we're accessible and we have the ability to find you people in your area as well. Bev, how can they find you?
Best way to find me is my name, Beverly Hunter. I don't have a website at the moment up. I'm changing names in my business. So I was Turning on the Light Learning Center for 25 years, and now I'm going into Rare Wonders. So best thing is find me on Facebook under Beverly Hunter or Turning on the Light Facebook page.
Beautiful.
Or my phone number, 250-864-6203.
Thank you, Bev. Alexis,
You're
how
welcome.
can we find you?
You could check my website. So my personal site is alexiscostello.com, or you could check me through my school's website. It's the GEMS College of Energy Medicine or gemskinesiologycollege.com. I'm on all the socials talking about muscle testing work and energy work all the time, 24/7, 365. So if you look me up on any of the things, you will find me and get in touch. Yep.
Perfect. Thank you, Alexis. Denise, how can we find you?
Well, anybody that wants to learn how to do muscle testing online conveniently and get tons of support, reach out to muscletuners.fit. And my name that you'll see displayed if you're watching the video, Denise at muscletuners.fit, will find me.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, everyone. This is Be Well with Michelle Greenwell. This has been season 2, episode 4. And as you consider your road to well-being, consider how you can move more in your day, how you can bring activities that can support you to be energized and feeling full of life. And as you've listened to some of the things we've talked about today, we hope you might go find a piece of music, walk out in nature, dance in the kitchen, any way that you find that can bring you some joy. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Michelle.